My own mother lied in court to trap me with my ex's baby. So I uncovered the truth, exposed their scheme, and watched her lose everything she valued. I never thought the person who brought me into this world would be the one to destroy everything I believed about family, loyalty, and unconditional love. But here I am, 34 years old, sitting in my law office at midnight, staring at documents that prove my own mother conspired against me in the most unthinkable way. My name is Brandon Keller, and I'm a family attorney in Chicago. Ironic, isn't it? I've spent my entire career helping families navigate their worst moments, divorces, custody battles, domestic disputes. Yet I never saw the betrayal coming from within my own home. My relationship with my mother, Sylvia Keller, had always been complicated. She was a retired elementary school teacher, 58 years old, with strong opinions about everything and an overwhelming need to control every aspect of her family's lives. Despite her demanding nature, I loved her deeply. She was the woman who stayed up all night when I had pneumonia at age 7, who drove 3 hours to watch every one of my high school basketball games, who cried with pride when I graduated law school. That's what made what happened next so devastating. My marriage to Vanessa Moore had been a disaster from year 3 onward. We'd met at a mutual friend's wedding. She was beautiful, charming, and worked in marketing for a downtown firm. For the first 2 years, everything seemed perfect. But then the arguments started. The distance grew, and I began noticing little things that didn't add up. Text messages she'd quickly hide, late nights at the office that couldn't be verified, weekend trips with girlfriends that seemed suspicious. The truth came crashing down 18 months ago when I found explicit messages between her and her coworker Derek. The affair had been going on for over a year. The betrayal was crushing, but I'm a lawyer. I know how to compartmentalize pain and focus on facts. I filed for divorce immediately. What puzzled me during this time was my mother's reaction. Throughout my marriage, Sylvia had never particularly liked Vanessa. She thought she was too flashy, too focused on material things, and not good enough for my son. But after I filed for divorce, something strange happened. My mother suddenly started asking about Vanessa constantly. How is she handling everything? She'd ask during our weekly dinners. Is she taking care of herself? Where is she living now? When Vanessa gave birth to a baby boy 7 months after I discovered the affair, my mother's interest became even more intense. She'd bring up the baby in every conversation, wondering aloud about his health, his development, whether he looked like our family. I found this odd because the timeline didn't make sense. If the baby was mine, Vanessa would have been pregnant during her affair, which seemed unlikely given how distant we'd become. But I was dealing with my own emotional recovery and building my solo practice, so I didn't think too deeply about it. That changed 8 months later when Vanessa served me with papers demanding child support. I was reviewing contracts in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. "Brandon, there's a process server here for you." My heart sank as I read the documents. Vanessa was claiming that her son Michael was my biological child and demanding $3,200 per month in child support, plus medical expenses and educational costs. The filing was professional, clearly prepared by a competent attorney, and it painted me as a deadbeat father who had abandoned his responsibilities. The first person I called was my mother. "Mom, did you know Vanessa was planning to sue me for child support?" There was a pause that lasted too long. "Well, honey, if the baby is yours, don't you think you should take responsibility?" "The baby isn't mine. The timeline doesn't work. She was having an affair when she got pregnant." "Brandon, that's a terrible thing to say about the mother of your child. That baby looks just like you did as an infant. I can see it in his eyes." "You've seen the baby?" Another pause. "Well, yes. Vanessa brought him by a few weeks ago. She's struggling financially and she just wanted family support." My blood ran cold. "She brought him to your house?" "Mom, why didn't you tell me this?" "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. You're being stubborn and selfish. That little boy is your son, and he deserves his father's support." I hung up the phone feeling like I'd entered an alternate reality. My own mother was taking my ex-wife's side in a legal battle against me. The woman who had raised me to value truth and integrity was asking me to accept financial responsibility for a child that couldn't possibly be mine. Over the next few weeks, as I prepared my defense, I started noticing more strange behavior from my mother. She would mention conversations with Vanessa casually, as if they were old friends. She'd bring up details about the baby's development that she couldn't have known unless she was seeing him regularly. One evening, I decided to drive by my mother's house unannounced. It was a Thursday around 7 p.m., and I saw Vanessa's car in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see my mother holding the baby while Vanessa sat on the couch, and they appeared to be having an intense conversation. I sat in my car for 20 minutes watching this surreal scene. My mother, who had supposedly disapproved of Vanessa throughout my entire marriage, was now babysitting her child and having what looked like intimate conspiratorial discussions. When I confronted her the next day, the conversation exploded. "Mom, what the hell is going on between you and Vanessa? Watch your language with me, Brandon Michael Keller. I'm still your mother. Then act like it. Why are you spending time with my ex-wife? Why are you encouraging this lawsuit?" Her face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Because that baby is my grandson, and I won't let you abandon him the way your father wanted to abandon you." "What are you talking about? Dad never wanted to abandon me. Your father had doubts when I was pregnant with you. He questioned whether you were really his. It nearly destroyed our marriage. I won't let history repeat itself." I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just revealed. "So because Dad had doubts about me, you're assuming this baby is mine despite all evidence to the contrary?" "I don't need evidence. I know my own grandchild when I see him." "That's not how biology works, Mom. That's not how anything works. Biology isn't everything, Brandon. Family loyalty is. And right now, you're failing at both." The conversation ended with her literally ordering me out of her house. I drove home in a daze, realizing that my relationship with my mother might be irreparably damaged over a child that I was certain wasn't mine. As the court date approached, Vanessa's attorney sent over their witness list. My mother's name was on it. I called her immediately. "Mom, please tell me you're not actually planning to testify against me in court." "I'm planning to testify for the truth. That baby is your son, and you need to take responsibility. Have you lost your mind? Do you understand what you're doing? You're helping my ex-wife take money from me for a child that isn't mine. It is yours, Brandon. I know it in my heart. Your heart isn't admissible evidence in court." But she had already made up her mind. My own mother was going to take the stand and argue that I should be financially responsible for another man's child. The day of the hearing was one of the worst of my life. I sat at the defendant's table with my attorney, watching Vanessa present her case. She was polished, sympathetic, and convincing. She talked about our marriage, the difficulties we'd faced, and how I had become distant and cold during her pregnancy. Then my mother took the stand. Watching Sylvia Keller, the woman who had taught me about honesty, integrity, and standing up for what's right, sit in that witness chair and lie under oath was like watching my childhood die in real time. "Mrs. Keller, what is your relationship to the defendant? I'm his mother. And have you had the opportunity to observe the child in question?" "Yes, I've spent considerable time with little Michael. He's clearly Brandon's son. The resemblance is unmistakable. He has the same eyes, the same facial structure. Any mother would recognize her own grandson." Vanessa's attorney continued, "In your opinion, is your son avoiding his parental responsibilities?" My mother looked directly at me, and for a moment I thought I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. But then she answered, "Yes. Brandon is running from his obligations as a father. It's not the way I raised him." I felt like I was going to vomit. My own mother had just testified that I was a deadbeat dad who was abandoning my child. The judge was taking notes, clearly influenced by the testimony of a defendant's own mother. When it was my turn to present my case, I stood up and addressed the court. "Your Honor, I respectfully request a DNA test to establish paternity before any support order is entered." Vanessa's attorney immediately objected. "Your Honor, Mr. Keller is simply trying to delay his obligations. The physical resemblance is clear, and his own mother has confirmed the paternal relationship." The judge looked troubled by my request. Having a defendant's mother testify against him was unusual and compelling. "Mr. Keller, this is a rather extraordinary request given that your own mother has testified to the paternal relationship. Your Honor, with all due respect to my mother, DNA testing is the only scientifically reliable method to establish paternity. I believe I have the right to know for certain whether this child is biologically mine before being ordered to provide 18 years of financial support." After a brief recess, the judge ruled, "Given the unusual circumstances of this case, I'm going to order DNA testing. However, given Mrs. Keller's testimony and the apparent physical resemblance, I'm inclined to grant temporary support pending the test results." I was ordered to pay $2,000 per month in temporary child support while we waited for the DNA results. As I walked out of that courtroom, I felt completely alone in the world. My ex-wife was lying, my mother had betrayed me, and the legal system was forcing me to pay for another man's child. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have done as an attorney. I broke into my mother's email account. I knew her password because she'd asked me to help her set up online banking years earlier, and like many people her age, she used the same password for everything. What I found in her inbox made me physically sick. There were dozens of emails between my mother and Vanessa, dating back to just 2 weeks after my divorce was finalized. The correspondence revealed a calculated conspiracy that was more twisted than I could have imagined. From Vanessa to my mother Sylvia, I know Brandon will never believe Michael is his, but with your support, we can make sure this baby has the financial security he deserves. Brandon makes good money as a lawyer. He can afford to help. From my mother to Vanessa, don't worry, dear. I've always wanted a grandchild and Michael is perfect. Brandon doesn't need to know the truth about Derek. What he doesn't know won't hurt him, and this way everyone gets what they need. The emails continued for months, with my mother coaching Vanessa on what to say in court, how to present herself, and how to make me look like an irresponsible father. They had planned every detail of this legal ambush. But the most damning email was from just 3 days before the hearing. Vanessa, remember that when I testify, I need to sound absolutely certain about the paternity. Brandon is stubborn, but he's always respected my judgment. If his own mother says the baby is his, the judge will believe it. We just need to get through this hearing, get the support order, and then Michael will be taken care of. Brandon will eventually come around. He's a good man, even if he's being difficult right now. I printed every single email. Then I called the DNA testing facility and paid extra for rush results. 3 days later, I had the answer I already knew. Michael was not my biological child. The probability of paternity was 0%. But I didn't immediately share these results. Instead, I spent the next week gathering more evidence of the conspiracy between my mother and Vanessa. I hired a private investigator who confirmed that they had been meeting regularly for months, always at times when they thought I wouldn't find out. The investigator also discovered something interesting. Derek, Vanessa's affair partner, had been transferred to his company's Los Angeles office right around the time Michael was born. Convenient timing to avoid any paternity questions. I scheduled a meeting with Vanessa and my mother, telling them I wanted to discuss a settlement before the DNA results came back. They both showed up at my office, confident that they had me cornered. Brandon, my mother said as she sat down, I'm glad you're finally being reasonable about this. Michael needs his father in his life. That's what I want to talk about, I said, placing a folder on the table between us. I've been thinking a lot about fatherhood, about family loyalty, about truth. Vanessa smiled nervously. I know this has been hard for you, but once you spend time with Michael, you'll see what exactly? I opened the folder and pulled out the DNA test results. That he's not my son? The silence in the room was deafening. Vanessa's face went white, and my mother's mouth fell open. According to this certified DNA analysis, there is a 0% probability that I am Michael's biological father. 0%, Mom. Not unlikely. Not improbable. Impossible. My mother was the first to speak. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. No mistake. But you know what isn't a mistake? I pulled out the printed emails. This extensive correspondence between the two of you, planning this entire fraud. I began reading aloud. Sylvia, I know Brandon will never believe Michael is his, but with your support, we can make sure this baby has the financial security he deserves. Vanessa stood up quickly. Brandon, I can explain. Sit down. My voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. Both of you, sit down and listen. I continued reading their emails, watching as the color drained from both their faces. The conspiracy was laid out in black and white. My mother's willingness to lie under oath, Vanessa's calculated manipulation, their joint plan to deceive me and the court system. Do you understand what you've done? I asked when I finished reading. Mom, you committed perjury. You lied under oath in a court of law. Vanessa, you've committed fraud, filing false legal documents to obtain money under false pretenses. My mother was crying now. Brandon, I've always wanted a grandchild, and when I saw Michael, he seemed so perfect, and I thought, you thought you could lie and manipulate and steal to get what you wanted. You thought you could destroy my trust, my finances, and my reputation to fulfill your fantasy of being a grandmother. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Vanessa whispered. I just needed help with expenses and your mom said. My mom said you could commit fraud together. My mom said she'd help you steal from me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where I'd built my career on the principle that truth matters, that justice matters, that families should protect each other. Here's what's going to happen, I said without turning around. Vanessa, you're going to voluntarily dismiss your child support case. You're going to sign a document admitting that you knowingly filed false paternity claims. You're going to reimburse me for the temporary support I've already paid, plus all my legal fees. Brandon, I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll work out a payment plan. Because if you don't, I'm going to file criminal charges for fraud and perjury. And I'm going to sue you in civil court for damages. I'm going to make sure every lawyer in this city knows exactly what you did. I turned to face my mother. And you, Mom. You're going to return to court and admit that you lied under oath. You're going to publicly acknowledge that you perjured yourself in an attempt to help someone steal money from your own son. Brandon, please. I'm your mother, are you? Because mothers don't lie to destroy their children's lives. Mothers don't conspire with strangers to steal from their own family. What you did isn't motherhood, it's betrayal of the worst kind. Tears were streaming down her face. I just wanted to help that baby. I wanted to be a grandmother so badly. So you decided to make me pay for someone else's child through lies and manipulation. You decided that your desires were more important than my life, my finances, my future. The meeting ended with both women agreeing to my terms. Vanessa signed the dismissal papers that day. My mother scheduled a court appearance to retract her testimony, but the damage to our relationship was irreversible. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My father, Robert Keller. Dad was a quiet man, a retired electrician who had always preferred to stay out of family conflicts. But that day, he looked angrier than I'd ever seen him. Son, he said as he sat down, I need you to know that I had no idea what your mother was planning. I know, Dad. This isn't your fault. I've been married to that woman for 36 years and I thought I knew her. But what she did to you? He shook his head. I can't forgive it, I can't understand it, and I can't stay married to someone who would do that to their own child. I was shocked. My parents had been married since they were 22 years old. They'd weathered financial struggles, health scares, and the normal ups and downs of a long marriage. I never imagined anything could break them apart. Dad, you don't need to leave Mom because of me. This isn't just about you, Brandon. This is about discovering that the woman I've shared my life with is capable of lying, manipulating, and hurting people to get what she wants. If she could do this to you, what else has she been lying about? What else don't I know? He moved out that week and filed for divorce the following month. The man who had never spoken an unkind word about my mother in my presence was done with her forever. The fallout in the community was swift and brutal. Word spread quickly about what had happened, partly because court records are public, partly because several people had witnessed my mother's emotional courtroom confession, and partly because I had no interest in protecting her reputation anymore. Sylvia Keller, the respected retired teacher who had volunteered at church for decades and organized neighborhood charity drives, became the woman who had committed perjury to steal money from her own son. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her. The church quietly asked her to step down from her volunteer positions. Even her own siblings were horrified by what she had done. Vanessa faced consequences too. Her employer learned about the fraud charges and terminated her employment. She had to move back in with her parents and take a minimum wage job to make ends meet. Derek, the actual father, refused to provide any support, claiming he wasn't ready for fatherhood. As for me, I threw myself into my work with renewed focus. The experience of being betrayed by the two women I had trusted most made me a more effective attorney, particularly in family law cases involving deception and manipulation. Clients appreciated having a lawyer who truly understood how devastating family betrayal could be. My practice grew rapidly. Word spread that Brandon Keller was the attorney you wanted if you were dealing with a spouse who was lying about finances, hiding assets, or making false accusations. I became known for my thorough investigations and my refusal to let anyone get away with deception in family court. 6 months after the court case, I met Sarah at a legal conference. She was a public defender with a quick wit, a generous heart, and absolutely no interest in material possessions. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours, and I found myself telling her things I had never shared with anyone. "So, your own mother testified against you?" she asked, incredulous. "My own mother committed perjury to help my ex-wife steal from me," I corrected. I don't even have words for that level of betrayal. Neither did I at the time. But it taught me something important about family. What's that? Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, honesty, and genuine love. The people who are truly your family are the ones who want the best for you, who support your happiness, who tell you the truth even when it's difficult. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. And your mom wasn't doing any of those things. My mom was prioritizing her own desires over my well-being. She was willing to destroy my life to fulfill her fantasy of being a grandmother. That's not love. That's selfishness disguised as family obligation. My relationship with Sarah developed slowly, built on complete honesty and mutual respect. We talked about everything: our childhoods, our fears, our dreams, our non-negotiable values. When I told her about my trust issues, she understood. When she told me about her own family struggles, I listened without judgment. 2 years later, we married in a small ceremony attended by my father, Sarah's family, and our closest friends. My mother was not invited, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt completely at peace with that decision. During our honeymoon, Sarah asked me if I ever missed having a relationship with my mother. "I miss the mother I thought I had," I answered honestly. "I miss believing that she was someone who would always have my back, who would never hurt me intentionally. But that person was apparently an illusion. Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I considered this carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone continue to hurt you. It doesn't mean pretending that what they did was acceptable. I've forgiven her in the sense that I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. What's the difference? Anger would mean I still cared about having a relationship with her. Being done means I've accepted that she's not the person I thought she was, and I've moved on without her. Last month, I received a letter from my mother. She had written to tell me that she missed me, that she was sorry for what had happened, and that she hoped we could find a way to heal our family. I read the letter twice, then put it in my filing cabinet without responding. Sarah found me in my office that evening, staring out the window. "Everything okay?" My mother wrote to me. She wants to reconcile. "How do you feel about that?" I feel like she still doesn't understand what she did. She talks about healing our family, as if this was some kind of misunderstanding or accident. She conspired with my ex-wife to commit fraud against me. She lied under oath. She was willing to let me pay for another man's child for 18 years rather than admit she was wrong. Sarah sat on the edge of my desk. "Those aren't the actions of someone who made a mistake. Those are the actions of someone who chose to hurt you." Exactly. And until she can acknowledge that, really acknowledge it, there's nothing to reconcile. 3 years have passed since the courtroom confrontation that changed my life forever. My father and I have grown closer than we ever were when I was growing up. He's become not just my dad, but one of my best friends. We have dinner every Sunday, and he often talks about how proud he is of the way I handled the whole situation. "You could have destroyed your mother completely," he told me recently. "You had evidence of criminal behavior, grounds for serious legal action, enough ammunition to ruin her life permanently. But you didn't. You set boundaries, you protected yourself, but you didn't seek revenge. Revenge wouldn't have changed anything, Dad. It wouldn't have made her a better person or given me back the trust she broke. That's how I know I raised you right, even if your mother forgot what that meant." My practice continues to thrive. Last year, I hired 3 associate attorneys and moved into a larger office space. I still specialize in family law, and I've become something of an expert in cases involving parental fraud and false paternity claims. It's amazing how often these situations occur, and how rarely people are prepared for the possibility that their own family members might be the source of the deception. Sarah and I are expecting our first child in the spring. When I told my father the news, he cried with joy and immediately started planning how he was going to spoil his grandchild. It struck me that this baby will have one grandfather who is completely invested in being the best grandparent possible, and one grandmother who will never know them at all. I'm okay with that. Actually, I'm more than okay. I'm grateful. My child will grow up understanding that family is about love, honesty, and mutual respect. they'll never have to wonder if the people who claim to love them might be willing to betray them for personal gain. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything played out. If I wish I had handled things differently, the answer is no. I learned something invaluable from this experience. You can't build genuine relationships on lies, manipulation, or conditional love. The people who are truly meant to be in your life will prove it through their actions, not their words. My mother made her choice when she decided that her desires were more important than my well-being. She chose to lie, to conspire, to betray the most fundamental trust between parent and child. I didn't end our relationship. She did. The moment she decided I was acceptable collateral damage in her quest to become a grandmother. I've built a new family now, one based on honesty, respect, and genuine love. Sarah, my father, our unborn child, and the close friends who stood by me through the worst of it. These are my real family. They're the people who want the best for me, who tell me the truth, who would never consider betraying me for personal gain. I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does, love does, truth does, and anyone who is willing to sacrifice those values for their own selfish desires has chosen to remove themselves from your life, regardless of how they're related to you. As I sit here tonight, preparing for fatherhood and reflecting on how much my life has changed, I feel nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for escaping a fraudulent child support obligation, gratitude for learning who I could really trust, and gratitude for the opportunity to build something real with people who actually deserve my love. I used to think family meant you had to accept whatever treatment people gave you simply because you shared DNA. Now I know better. Family means choosing each other, every day, through honesty and respect and genuine care. It means being willing to have difficult conversations, to admit when you're wrong, and to prioritize each other's well-being over your own selfish desires. My mother taught me that lesson, just not in the way she intended, and for that, at least, I suppose I should thank her.